And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, yeah.
All right, everybody. Eric Dim, your most complained cop, NYPD. This is New York's Finest Unfiltered podcast, doing your 265 Police Live series. Of course, with me as the founder and the co-host of the podcast, John McCarry, retired lieutenant. We got a good episode for you. Well, it's a good episode, but it's not a good topic. Unfortunately, John and I both support the rank and file of the New York City Police Department, but we always give a fair assessment, and we give an assessment on what's true. And unfortunately, we did observe a viral video at the Roosevelt Hotel in Manhattan in regards to Laura Loomer having an encounter with the police department and illegals. And what we saw is unprofessionalism. So let's get right into it. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so a couple of people sent me this video of Laura Loomer outside of the Roosevelt Hotel. Now, but who's Laura Loomer, right? She's an investigative reporter. She's definitely an in-your-face reporter. She's definitely aggressive. I mean, I think we've seen her single-handedly dismantle the Ron DeSantis campaign in Florida. She chased Ron DeSantis everywhere he went. And by aggressive, I don't mean that she's standing there slamming you with a camera in your face, but she's trying to get close to you and ask you questions. I've never seen her where she's physically impeding someone's space. I have never seen anything like that. I have seen her ask questions, though. She gets right. She's an aggressive reporter. She's a reporter. I've interacted with many reporters during this journey that I've taken since I left the department. And I mean, she kind of just fits the bill, little bit more aggressive as far as the fact that she's out there on the street. But if you speak to any of the reporters, they all have the same, they're constantly trying to get information off of you. They're constantly trying to get you to speak to them. Now, by aggressive, I just mean because as regular people, we don't do that when we interact with each other like reporters do. So I don't think that, regardless of how you feel about Laura Loomer, I don't believe that she actually did anything too harsh here other than what she does every day and what she's been doing the last few years.
I think you're right. I think you have to put aside, your assessment of Laura Loomer, how you feel about her for the public. What we're looking at here is a journalist doing her job. I think that, yes, she's aggressive, but it's actually being assertive. That's their job. Their job is to get information, to get a story. Now, let's talk about this incident here. So Laura Loomer is at the Roosevelt Hotel, obviously trying to get information, what's going on with the illegals in New York City, right? So based without context on the viral video that we have, she encounters a sergeant from the New York City Police Department where she's alleging that she and other cohorts with her are victims from these illegals. And supposedly their phones were snatched, grabbed at. They didn't give any permission for that. Now, okay, so what we could look at this and say, well, Laura Loomer is actually antagonizing the situation, and she's bringing trouble to herself. But she's a reporter. She's a journalist. That's her job, is to gather information. Do I think that she is possibly a nuisance and annoyance to the illegals that are there and other residents of New York City? Absolutely. However, she has a right to free speech. She has a right to freedom of expression. On a nightly basis, we see pro-Palestinian riots and protests, and they afford the right to be there. That's their First Amendment right. So Laura Loomer, in the small company that she has, there's no indication that she was impeding on infrastructure or impeding on the residents of New York City, other than being a nuisance and antagonizing the illegals. Now, even with that being said, that still doesn't give the illegals the right to grab at her phone. So the encounter that she has with the sergeant should be completely apolitical and take out the fact of what she's doing and what you feel about her stance and how she's handled. She has, again, freedom of expression. She has the right to be there. But the problem that I have is we are always supporting the rank and file, and it's very tough to support the rank and file, especially the sergeant, when the interaction was not flattering in his favor at all. So let's get right into that. Let's talk about his demeanor. Let's talk about how he handled it and what we observed and our opinions based without the context of what happened before, preceding it, and what happens after at the precinct.
So just a little backstory. I posted the video on Instagram. It was already out on Twitter. Laura Loomer has 1 million followers. I only have about 6,000. So, I mean, just the context there. But the video does go viral on Instagram, Not crazy viral. Not crazy, but it gets like 50, 60,000 views, whatever. But there's a lot
like
of
8,000 followers, but it's okay.
Whatever, something like that. But she has 1 million, so it was already viral before we did it. So I come to our attention that the sergeant's a little upset that we posted it. But I mean, it is what it is. We talk all things New York City. We talk all things the NYPD. And I'm going to continue to do it regardless of who likes what or who doesn't like how I feel or what Eric says. Like, we don't care. I mean, this is our opinion. This is what we're doing. This is America. This is America. If you uphold the Constitution, you uphold the right to opinions. You uphold the right to free speech. I do want to be fair to the sergeant before I go over this, however. We've both worked in Manhattan, Eric. It is stressful. Working in Manhattan is a very stressful situation. Being a sergeant in the New York City Police Department, in my opinion, is the toughest job in the world. I don't believe there is a harder job than that. And now you're in the middle of Manhattan. You're at the middle of a volatile time in Manhattan where progressives control New York City. They hate you because you're a police officer. Everyone's angry at you. Even the people who support you are angry at you. And now, because of Joe Biden's open border policy and Eric Adams waving all of these illegal immigrants into New York City, you have a very volatile situation where the whole world is watching what's going on with New York City. And the whole world's paying attention and saying, wow, New York City's failing. Crime's up. They're giving away resources to illegals. Cops are fleeing. Civilians are fleeing. Businesses are fleeing. New York City's in a bad, bad way right now. So everyone's kind of upset about this. Now, I understand in New York City, we have big hearts and we support everybody and we support families. But a lot of people are nervous about, especially military-age males without families coming to New York City in tens of thousands. And they should be. I'm highly concerned with it myself. So I do want to be fair to the sergeant just in the aspect, if you're standing on a New York City street, that might have been his 15th, 16th job for that day so far, only halfway through his tour. He might have encountered upwards of 500-600 people. You're going to make more decisions in your 8.5-hour shift or 8:57. If he's a patrol sergeant, you're going to make more decisions in that 8-hour 57 shift than most people are going to make in their lifetime. And I'd love to sit there and tell you that, oh yeah, I did it all perfectly and I was always nice and all that. No, I wasn't. I was definitely stern in everything I've ever did, questioning victims or questioning perpetrators or potential suspects. I was stern with both of them. If you caught me on camera, I wouldn't come off as nice as I come off in this podcast or as nice as if you meet me outside of work. So I just want to be fair on that point. Would you agree with that, Eric, that you're always going to have a little bit different stance than a normal person?
Absolutely. I agree. But I would always try to, one of my goals was to emotionally detach from a situation and leave out my politics and leave out my thoughts and make the assessment. And I do believe in the 40-70 rule. I actually mentioned this on Twitter. That means when I'm on a scene, if I have less than 40% of the information, I'm not ready to make a decision. And if I have more than 70%, I've waited too long. So I think it's important that you address a situation and you address it quickly. That's one thing that is so effective about the New York City, excuse me. What's so effective about the New York City Police Department in comparison to other police departments, what really makes us the GOAT is practicality. Our hands are always on the volume of jobs. So we get very used to making quick decisions. We're decisive. We move in and move out. So I do think that they took too long. And I believe that the sergeant, his demeanor, not even just some of the things that he said, were very condescending and unprofessional. So I would always try to remove that. Of course, you have times. If I did not feel a victim was credible, I was truthful and I would question, say, listen, I understand what you're telling me, but based on the information, I'm not sure it really makes sense. Do you want to think about what you're saying? I'm here to help you. But his demeanor is what really threw me off and what I didn't like about it. Why I say it's not flattering. It says a lot. Your body language speaks volumes. So his hands are in his pockets. His head is kind of to the side. His eyeballs are wide open the way he's looking at her. And at the same time, also, they're excited, right? They believe that they're victims of a situation. Everyone always believes they're right when you're on a scene. The victims believe they're right, and the potential perpetrators believe they're right. So we have two parties involved in this: potential victims, potential perpetrators. It's your job to separate these parties and get the information. But again, his hands are in his pockets, his head's to the side, he's listening, and at the same time, he's kind of shushing some of the people that are with Laura Loomer. So, well, you don't know how this works. So it's very condescending. And you know what? They don't have to know how it works. And I think, and this is what I tell my kids, and I really believe this, and this is what makes police officers effective. I try to do this. You have two ears and one mouth. We should listen more than we talk. And I think it would have been much more effective if he said less and just listened. Listen to her story, listen to the other party's story, then make your decision. You have 70% of the information, make your decision. And that's what I'm saying. At that point, you could say, you know what? Based on the information you're telling me, and based on the information I have from the other parties, I don't see a reason to make an arrest. Or if you see it and make an arrest, then make it. But for him to start saying, well, you don't know how this works, and then we get into another portion, which I think we'll get into after when we start talking about the evidence and the phones. But at this point, his demeanor, I think his hands should be open. I think his body should be outright. I think he should be more inviting and more welcome and start to understand the situation. That's why sergeants, it's a tough job. Yes, you're leading the charge. You're also out there. But I don't excuse that. Doesn't matter how much volume. That's why New York City police officers and sergeants get paid a substantial salary, especially with overtime. I felt the same way about myself. It was my job to listen. This person, it's the worst day of their life. For you, it's just another call. So you have to kind of be passionate with that and be empathetic. And I want to say that his demeanor spoke volumes to me. What do you think about his demeanor?
So I don't know this for a fact, but when I first saw the video, and then I've watched it a few times since then, especially that I keep getting messages from, from people that know him. And so then I've watched it closer and closer. So, I mean, from my initial stance on it, and even till now, after watching it a few times, I don't have any information on this, but it appears that he knows full well who she is. And then that leads me into the question, well, you know who Laura Loomer is. Were you told by the upper echelon who she was? Because clearly this mayoral administration does not like anyone who's aligned with Donald Trump. They fired our good friend Sal Greco for being aligned with Donald Trump. And I do believe they would shush away anyone that they believe is part of that party. We had Fabian Levy, who's the mayor's deputy commissioner of propaganda, or I believe the deputy commissioner of press information or whatever, the mayor's press officer. We had him the other day up on a press conference, basically telling that you shouldn't believe anything that comes out of the Trump camp, basically calling them liars. So was he told from the upper echelon, get rid of this girl? She's out there causing trouble. Do whatever you got to do. I don't want to see her there. Is that possible? Very possible. I mean, because the way he comes over like he doesn't even want to hear what they have to say, and he's already dismissing the claims. That's what I see. Now, I didn't see anything transpire, but that appears to be his first initial interaction with the complainant after he spoke to his officers, which is proper. I would speak to my officers first before I spoke to any party. I would speak to the officers on scene, what's going on here, before I speak to anybody on that scene. So it appears that that's the timing that, from what I see, again, we don't have the initial video of it. And I do agree with you, Eric. I'm not forgiving his demeanor, because I do think his demeanor was very aggressive. And Laura Loomer actually wasn't very aggressive with him at all. And the other complainants that were there were just trying to explain it. And he almost was, you're right, he was shushing them. And he had his hands in his front pockets. I've never used those pockets. Maybe I'll keep a roster in there, but I've never put my hands in the front pockets. It was a weird stance, and the way he was looking at it, he was giving it those weird eyes. So I agree. I think that the whole first approach escalated the situation and made it look really bad. And that's why you're getting comments on both sides. You're getting pro-cop people saying that you're a jerk, and you're getting far left anti-police people saying you're a jerk. And so you've just by that demeanor alone, that beginning thing, you've brought together people. You've brought together a lot of different people.
You know what? Like John said, I agree with you, right? So let's just go back to what you were saying earlier. I've had situations, you've had situations also that you have potential victims, but those victims could be volatile and they could escalate a situation, right? We've had victims before that were intoxicated, or maybe they're under the influence of substances. Even though they're victims, or maybe they're emotionally disturbed, they're victims, but they're escalating the situation. So I can understand you're handling a situation with potential victims, and as that encounter starts to increase, you start to gather information, they could be impeding your investigation. Maybe those victims are not straightforward, or the story changes several times. Then I could see that your demeanor starts to change. Maybe you start to get frustrated because you're trying to help these potential victims, but they're impeding, they're actually not helping you, which doesn't help them. But what you said is very important. Immediately, when he encounters Laura, he's already frustrated. He's already dismissing her. So that's why I do believe, and I believe it's credible what you're saying, that there was definitely some type of conversation that, hey, this is Laura Loomer. She's a rebel rouser. She's causing trouble here. We have illegals. We don't need the spotlight. We don't need crimes here. I do believe that conversation was had because, again, I want to point out what John said, that he's already dismissing her. And I don't believe at that point she was being aggressive at all. At that point, she's saying, look, they're grabbing the phones. She's stating exactly what happened. Of course, she's going to be excited. Whether she's right or wrong, two wrongs don't make right. They're grabbing her phone. And again, I want to go back to that. I think that his stance speaks volumes. His posture is kind of slouched. His head is turned in. It's kind of like he's standing over her. It's kind of like dominance. He's showing some dominance and arrogance at the same time. And you can see his eyes. I can almost, to me, it's almost like you see those words scrolling on a highway of, an emergency message. I can almost see the words in his mind, like, this lady's just driving me crazy. This is nonsense. I could see it. And he's completely arrogant. His hands are in his pockets. Obviously, they're not a threat to him, the way he's standing there, but just completely condescending. He had no interest in actually listening. He was not actively listening to what was happening. He was just trying to shit can that entire situation. He didn't want to take a crime. He wasn't treating them like they're potential victims. He was not handling that situation as someone who's emotionally detached. I think it was completely unprofessional. My first tweet I had put out, I said it wasn't flattering. But after watching it several times, not only is it not flattering, it's just completely unprofessional. And I know that, John, you and I do not stand and talk to people. It doesn't matter who they are. I never care. I don't care who the person is. It doesn't matter if it's a janitor or if it's Laura Loomer. They're a potential victim. They deserve the same respect. But he didn't handle it as a professional. I think definitely his mind was injected with some information for this upper echelon. And it shows exactly what we've been saying, that the leadership of an organization affects the rank and file. An organization, in order to have the ability to thrive, we base it on leadership. If an organization is crumbling, we can see it from the leadership. And the police department is crumbling, and we could see it right in this incident here.
Yeah, I think, the perception problem like raises in my head a lot. I just hear Eric Adams. I hear Ed Caban. I hear everyone talking perception versus reality. The perception problem, I'm going to tell you right now, is that they're alleging, and we see the video of them attempting to snatch the phone directly out of someone's hand. I hear in the video, I believe I heard in the video that the girl actually said he took my phone. So that is a grand larceny. Even if it's not a grand larceny, just the attempt and the grab is an attempted grand larceny. That's a felony, right? So we don't want those felonies, right, in New York City, because what does that do? It adds to the perception that crime's not down. Crime isn't down, by the way, and especially in Manhattan. But it adds to that perception that crime's not down. It debunks everything that New York City mayor is saying. The other problem that a lot of people are complaining about is that these illegal immigrants have brought in an influx of crime with them. So now you have a twofold. Not only did you take a felony, took a felony in front of the Roosevelt Hotel, which is a migrant center, which that raises a red flag right there, because what does that lead to? Migrant crime, right? What they call that. And they under the impression that they want everyone to believe that everyone just came here to work and there is no crime stemming from these people, and they commit less crimes than the regular population. And that may be true, like Sam Antar had previously said on a previous podcast that we did. However, they're here illegally, so any rise in crime isn't a good rise. Nobody wants them here. So he's being put into this situation as a supervisor, as a sergeant. I understand the pressure that he's being put under, because let's face it, every supervisor in Manhattan right now, especially where their migrant center is, facing that exact issue, right? We want you to make great arrests, but we don't want them to be felonies. We don't want to take numbers, and we don't want any crime outside of the migrant stuff. And so, so to me, I see somebody that already made up his mind. We're not doing anything here. And again, I feel like there was a call made to him prior, whether it was his CO, somebody knew that Laura Loomer was out there and gave him the heads up. He already went there with an intention. That's my feeling on it. I think, I think that there's a lot of politics here. And as much as I could say that I've lost my temper a few times and I've lost my patience a few times with people, I don't believe it was called for here at all. And again, if this was my mother and I saw this video, I would be enraged. Whether my mother is a wacko or not, I'm going to be mad. Like, you didn't handle it. My mom's crazy, but she didn't do anything wrong here. She didn't do anything wrong, and you weren't even listening to her side of the story when she clearly showed you video. There's going to be 3 snips when we show the video, and for those of you that are on audio, and you're going to see an illegal alien grab the phone 3 times. 3 different times, an attempt to grab the phone, smack the phone. And Laura Loomer is not sticking the phone in their face. They're just filming from a distance, and they're actually coming over to try to rip the phone away from them because they don't want to be filmed. And by the way, this has happened to numerous people outside of these migrant shelters, especially the Roosevelt Hotel. So this isn't like Laura Loomer was here and the situation escalated. It's like, no, anyone that tries to document this is having issues with the security guards, is having issues with the NYPD, and is having issues with the illegal immigrants.
So I think it's important to note, right? We're talking about being a sergeant in the police department. And again, I agree with you. I was a lieutenant. That was my last rank, and so were you. And you're in a leadership position, but by far, my hat's off to all the sergeants of the New York City Police Department. It's by far the hardest working job of the New York City Police. But you are a frontline supervisor. In some cases, because of a mass exodus, especially now, you're a glorified cop. You're in a leadership position. You have to do the job of a cop. You have to do the job of a leader. You have to deal with your lieutenants, your captains. There is an extreme amount of pressure. However, in this particular encounter, we have to ask, why is he frustrated? Why is the sergeant frustrated? Which is why I believe what you're saying, John, because I was saying the same thing. I believe that there's pressure as far as taking the crime for this incident, pressure because of the location with the migrants. And I do believe that there was a conversation had, pressure because he's dealing with Laura Loomer. Because we know it, right? As law enforcement, especially the New York City Police Department, it's very rare that you deal with people on their best days. We deal with people on their worst days. When you deal with someone, they're having the worst day of their life. They're going to be excited. They're going to be yelling and screaming. It's the nature of the job. We're quite used to it. That's what we deal with on a daily basis. And I don't think that Laura Laura Loomer here is acting crazy at all. I think she's not screaming. She's stating her case. I think she's standing her position. But why is he frustrated? He's frustrated because he knows that he's going to have to take a grand larceny crime. He's frustrated because there's illegals involved. It may get some press. It might be newsworthy. Why is he also frustrated with that? Because it's Laura Loomer, who's a journalist, because there's illegals. Due to the nature of the arrest, he might actually have to fill out what's called an unusual occurrence report. So the New York City Police Department, when there's an incident that may be newsworthy, especially in Manhattan, as a sergeant, you may have to prepare what's called an unusual occurrence report. And that report will be a synopsis of the actual incident and will be informative to the chiefs of the police department. Also, the media will have access to it. So again, I think that's part of his stress, because ultimately he's a sergeant. He's going to make the decisions, but practicality wise, he's not going to be stuck with the actual arrest. So why is he frustrated? And exactly what we're saying, it's the backdrop of what's going on behind the scenes. It's indicative and every reason to believe that is where that frustration and the stress comes from in regards to this particular incident.
Yeah, so I think we talked about it. We talked about it for about 20 minutes. Let's play the video and then talk about it after, so everyone can get just a snip of what's going on. This video is about 4 minutes, 40 seconds. And like I said, for those of you on audio, there are snips in there that Laura put in there that shows her phone being grabbed, or her and the people that she's with. There are other journalists that she's with. So here's the video.
What's going on today?
So we're press and we're doing a story. We're walking by.
We're walking by.
We got the whole thing on camera.
We're walking by because we're covering the illegal immigration of our country, and this is one of the main processing centers, and it's a public sidewalk. And
I just want to let you know you're being recorded. It's important to me. I want to let you know.
And so we're walking by, and we're just filming because we're trying to show how these processing centers are basically shutting down hotels and taking over our cities. And then these guys just started staring at us, and when we were walking by, he started to like slap at us, and we said, "Don't touch our stuff." And we watched one of them literally do a drug deal.
So you have footage of this?
Yeah,
The whole thing.
You
can watch the whole thing.
He grabbed my phone. He grabbed my phone.
Hold on. So I'm getting conflicting information here.
Because they're liars.
Did you shove a camera in his face?
No, we're filming like this. We're allowed to film like
Did
this.
you come up to his face and shove
No.
a camera
No,
in
we
his face?
did not shove a camera in
Got the
his
whole
face.
thing.
We got the whole thing on camera. It's just crazy. You record this too. Are you recording?
Yeah, I'm
Like, this is crazy. I can't believe in America, like, they're going to take the side of illegal aliens.
Okay. First of all, I'm not
Okay.
allowed by law
Well,
to
that's-
pass some
if you don't- you're worried about
status.
that,
I
that's
need to know their status. I'm just curious. Out of
Because they're
curiosity.
in line at a migrant
Maybe
center.
just stand on the corner. Come to the corner
Yes.
and get shots from there.
So you took your phone?
Yes,
You want to press charges?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. We're gonna need that phone, and that phone. We're gonna get the evidence from regards because it's gonna be part of the case. We're gonna go back to the precinct. Okay?
I'll follow you there.
No. You're gonna go with us to the precinct.
You want to?
Might as well. I mean, we have to, or else this, like, dangerous criminal is going to be on the
We got
streets
another
of New
guy
York.
with us. Let's just.
Right, we're gonna do a full investigation back at the precinct.
That's fine.
Fine.
I also need to get the other witness information. Just stand by.
That's fine.
So you can see that this illegal alien just got arrested by NYPD because he tried stealing my phone, and we also tried stealing his phone. And we're going to press charges. We're going to press charges against this individual.
No, it's evidence. No, I need it now. You want to press charges after my investigation.
Yeah, so show me the footage. You don't have to
All right?
take the
This is how
phone.
this works now. You report a crime. I have to get the footage. This is all going to become evidence down the line. So I'm going to need your.
We're fine with it becoming evidence.
I need the phone right now.
Like, you don't have
And
to
if you're,
take an entire phone to get evidence.
this is the. If you're not willing to comply, I can't
Not
take
that
a
we're not
report for you.
complying. You
All right, that's not how this works. If you don't cooperate right now, I'm not going to arrest this guy. I can't do it.
Do you want me to give him my phone? Call a lawyer. Call yours.
How long? When did she get her phone back? When did she get it back?
Should we talk to a lawyer before we
This is
give
not how
you
this
the phone?
works.
When do
You
I?
call to report a crime. I
Yes.
need
When
the
do I
phone.
get it back?
You'll get back eventually. It's going to be evidence.
We're leaving the city in a few days.
Saturday. That we're doing a news
Man,
story.
you're reporting a crime right now.
Yeah, you need
You're
the
victim of a
footage.
crime. I need him and I need you back at the precinct. I need that phone.
The footage, not the phone.
Okay, this is not how this works. If you want to report, this is how
I
it's going to
do.
get done.
How long until I get my phone
I
back?
don't know. It's evidence. And you're reporting
The
it right
footage is
now.
evidence.
I need to do some
The
investigation.
footage is evidence.
Not the physical phone.
What is the evidence?
Could we talk to?
I want your supervisor, please.
I am the supervisor.
Then I want your
Ma'am,
supervisor.
if you're going to be impeded, I can't arrest this individual.
We're not impeding any investigation.
That's not how this works.
We're not impeding any investigation, sir. We just want to make sure our
Sir,
rights are in
Right
order.
now, this is a police matter. If you don't want to cooperate, I can't arrest this individual.
No.
Are you
Hey.
refusing to do a report right
No,
now?
we're not.
No, we're
refusing.
not.
It's just we're never
Okay,
going to
this is
give
how
the
this
whole
works.
phone.
If you can't do this, I can't take a report for you.
I would just give
So
it.
when do we get the phone back? I need your phone.
Could you mail it back when you're finished?
That's not how this works.
I'm asking a question, sir. I'm trying to cooperate with you.
Very
Can you
unprofessional.
mail the phone back
At
when you're
this point,
finished?
you impede investigation. I can't help.
No, we're not. Hey, sir.
ridiculous. This is so crazy.
We
He assaulted a police officer too. They better
That's not how this works, Eric.
You know what's interesting, right? Let's start out. Let's go in reverse here. So the last thing he said was, "I can't help you." And you know why he said that? Because he never wanted to help her. He never had intentions of actually addressing this case properly. It's quite interesting. I'm the most complained cop at the NYPD. My complaints come from the most volatile, violent perpetrators New York City has to offer, working in the South Bronx, retrieving illegal firearms off the street. I think this is why I say, if any CCRB panelists are watching this and they do self-initiating cases, that's why I would say CCRB is necessary. If I was Laura Loomer, I would file a civilian complaint. I think he's completely unprofessional. I think he's completely discourteous. That's what CCRB is for, because clearly he has no intentions of addressing this properly. And again, they said it, he's not listening. He already has his mind set. Look at his demeanor. Look at his posture, the way his hands in his pocket, his facial expression speaks volumes to me. And even when he was talking to Laura Loomer and the other lady, I don't know her name, but the potential victims, he has his hands high. It's called indexing. When your hands are above someone else's hands, it's called indexing. And you do that to assert dominance. I actually used to teach self-defense courses. And in self-defense, how you assert dominance to protect yourself is to always keep your hands higher than someone. If someone's talking to you or they're raising their voice, you want to keep your hands higher so that you do assert some sense of dominance. It's very psychological. And that's what he's doing. He's asserting dominance. But I just, honestly, I hate to say this. It pains me to say this because I always want to give the rank and file the benefit of the doubt and support them. I don't know this sergeant from a hole in the wall, but I can tell you, he's a complete buffoon. I think he's an embarrassment to the rank of sergeant, and I think he's embarrassed himself. And he's allowed politics to inject this situation. Why do you care if she thinks they're illegals or questions their status? Why do you even care? Again, he should address the situation and say, okay, I have two parties here. I have potential victims, potential perpetrators. Make the assessment. You're either making the arrest or not. But him putting the weight of the charge on them, it's almost like extortion. Well, if you're going to make a crime, if you're going to report a crime, then you're coming to the precinct with me and I'm taking your phone. Why do you want to take her phone? You want to take her phone so that she doesn't want to report it. You don't have to take her phone. What happened to common sense in policing? Have her email the video of the encounter with the illegals with them snatching the phone, take a picture of the phone and a picture of the IMEI number, and that's it. Of course, if I was a potential victim, I wouldn't want to go forward and allege a crime and have to give up my phone. What if that phone is your livelihood? What if that work number is your house phone? What if that's your business phone? What if you work remote and do everything on the phone? It's absolutely ridiculous, and I'm embarrassed. Look at his demeanor. Just a complete moron.
I mean, the demeanor is totally unprofessional. And like, listen, I'm going to stand in a dominant manner and I'm going to speak from a position of authority, regardless who I'm talking to, if it's a victim, because we've only been trained to do that. And, you know, and I think that keeps you safe in all aspects, because easily a victim could turn into a perpetrator, right? Could turn into an adversary for you. But I mean, you see his dominant right leg is stepped forward at her and his gun is stepped forward at her. Where were we ever taught that? You know, like I would always keep my gun hip back, regardless who I was talking to, right? In that dominant stance. So I think you're right. He's completely not intimidated of her at all. So that leads me to believe that she's not being aggressive at all, because he's not worried about pointing his gun right at her while he has his hand in a pocket that I've never really seen many cops use before. So he has his hand in that pocket, and he's got his head cocked sideways. He has a stupid look on his face, like he's not really listening to her, and he doesn't want to hear what she said. And he's, you know, and clearly you saw that she's walking and some kid just comes from the side of the street and tries to snatch the phone out of her hand. So, I mean, and we saw it multiple times, not the same incident, different incidents. So, I mean, clear as day, that's an attempted grand larceny. Then he starts with, I need all your phones. You need everyone's phone? You need everybody's phone there? So now a complainant, if you're a victim of a crime, you can't report a crime on video, or else the police department's going to take your cell phone. I mean, we worked before cell phones were prevalent, before camera phones were prevalent. I mean, before we had all this technology, department email, department phones. I've made a lot of arrests where there needed to be video, and I worked around not having that technology. I worked around using my own phone and then downloading it onto a disk, using my own personal email and downloading it onto a disk prior to the job giving us up-to-date technology so that we could actually interact like humans in the world. So we have all those things now. Cops have all those things. You have a cell phone, you have a department video. It's easy as, hey, I can't have a link to that video. I need that actual video. I need you to text it to me right here, or I need you to email it to me right here. And then the other part that really bothers me is when he tells her, you have to come back with me. And she says, okay, fine. And look at this look on his face right here. And she says, okay, fine, we'll follow you back. He goes, no, you're coming with me. Look at that look. That's like, oh, so now I'm being detained too? I have to go to the police precinct with cops? You know?
Look at his face.
So, first off, for evidence, you don't have to give your cell phone to the police when you're the victim of a crime. You have to supply them with the evidence they need. And even that, I believe, them just seeing the crime itself is enough for them to make that arrest. You know, obviously, if you're not being cooperative, that's a different story. But then you don't need to go back to the precinct. You don't need to go back to the precinct. No, I'm busy. I got something else to do. I'm not done. I'm done working. I don't have time to sit in an NYPD precinct all day. You're getting paid. I'm not. I can't sit there for hours and wait for you while you're trying to obviously get rid of this job and not take my complaint seriously. So like I said, I posted it because I think it needed to be shown, and I think it's a teaching lesson. I do. I think it's a teaching lesson for everybody, not just him. I mean, you're letting politics infect how you're interacting with the public. And by the way, the people who suffer the most from this type of behavior are the people that are less likely to be combative with us, and the people that more than likely support us. And we don't have a lot of support that day. So again, we're turning people that support law enforcement, people that are good people, that are law-abiding citizens, against the rank and file by having these type of interactions. You're treating victims like crap. You're putting illegal immigrants ahead of American citizens. You're putting people who commit criminal acts ahead of American citizens. You'll let Relly Rel walk away with no driver's license in a ghost car while he's on a cell phone, but you'll give my grandmother a ticket because she didn't click her seatbelt immediately upon pulling out of the place. So, I mean, this is where we're headed in law enforcement, and that face says it all.
There's a couple of things I want to break down here. So first thing, you have this still right here, which I think is a fantastic picture. And for me, I could depict this, and it speaks volumes to me, not just on the sergeant, but also the demeanor of the cops. And I always say that there are no bad troops, there's only bad leaders. Leadership is the most important thing. And at leadership, we own authority at every level, and we own our leadership style at every level. So in this incident, the sergeant is the highest ranking member. He is leading the charge here, and his troops are following his lead. His demeanor, his posture is arrogant. It comes from a place of frustration. It comes from a place of, again, I do believe that it's indicative that there's information going on in his mind of how he needs to get this arrest, or this potential arrest, just completely shit-canned. He needs to get rid of it. And you see the demeanor of the cops. It's not very inviting. Again, let me reflect on what you're saying, right, John? I agree with you. They're victims, and yes, you always have to assert your dominance, your authority, but you can assert your dominance and authority from a place of professionalism and not emotionally attach yourself to the situation. But his dominance is correlating to being a bully, in the sense of correlating dominance to authority and being in control. showing that you are in control and that you will handle it. That's a different dominance to express to potential victims. But we see the cops. My cops didn't stand like that. They got their hands inside their vest. You could clearly see that they're not interested in engaging these potential victims and actually helping them. They're following the lead of the sergeant. He has set the example. It's exactly what I always say. No bad troops, only bad leaders. They are following his lead. And that's exactly what we see in this particular snippet right here. Now, I will say I don't like also when he's being a bully and he said, "Well, this is not how it works." And you can see the way he's moving his hands and the way he's talking. There's an extreme amount of level of frustration that he's already, at this point, it appears to me that he's boxed in and he knows that they have to make this arrest. He knows that he's going to have to notify his commanding officer that, hey, in this high-profile spot where there's illegals and Laura Loomer is the potential victim, that you have a grand larceny arrest here. And you can clearly, again, like I said, you can see the words going across his head because that's exactly what he's thinking. And that's where it takes good leadership. That's why I believe they want people like you, John, and people like myself, not part of the police department anymore, that stand on moral principle, that don't allow the politics to inject and infect you from doing your actual police work. Because you and I would have did the proper job and we would have stood up to our commanding officers, even if it meant them throwing us out of the unit. But you know what? At least we could sleep at night. And even their position, the way they're standing, it clearly shows that they don't see Laura Loomer and her company as potential threats. It's so embarrassing. And I love the fact that you brought that double standard up because I want to mention that also. This is what drives me crazy. And we saw it in the Union Square riot. The police department went out. They had kid gloves. They had things being thrown at them. They had to hold up plywood to protect themselves. But then when they're in Staten Island and they're addressing conservative pro-law enforcement protesters in regards to illegals, they arrest an older man for jaywalking. They asserted their dominance. Now, if Laura Loomer, let's take Laura Loomer out of this. Let's replace her, exactly what you said, with Jose LaSalle or Relly Rel, and they're screaming in their face, and they're being completely hostile. He would probably say, "No problem, sir. How can I help you?" He would probably be kissing their ass. We would see a complete different demeanor. And that's the part that I don't like about this. And I'm sure, Dino, I know you're going to be watching this, and I don't care what you think, because we're going to be honest. You embarrass yourself and you embarrass the police department the way that you handle yourself. And this is a great opportunity, as John said, a teaching moment to think about how you're going to further in your career.
Yeah, and again, it's clear as day. This is an attempted grand larceny. I mean, you could clearly see this. You know, you could clearly see Laura Loomer's walking. Watch this. She's walking. Walking, and boom. As she's walking, her phone is nowhere near anyone. And as she's walking up, boom, right there. He grabs it, and you see 3 other attempts. That's attempted grand larceny right there. That's a felony. You know, I didn't call DCPI and find out what he was arrested for because I really don't want to embarrass all these any further than just this embarrassment of posting this and doing this podcast on it. But again, what if that's your mother? Is this allowed in society? I don't care who it is. I don't care if they're exactly like what you said, Eric. I don't care if it's Relly Rel. I don't care if it's Laura Loomer. I don't care if it's Joe Biden. I don't care if it's Donald Trump. It doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't really matter at this point. Nothing really matters at this point other than there was a crime committed and you're a professional. You have a complainant who called 911. And your job is to get down to the bottom of it. Is it nonsense? Sure, it's nonsense to us. Is it nonsense to Laura Loomer? No. Is it nonsense to the public watching this? No. You know, it is the DA going to eventually draw this case up? Doesn't matter. Did the DA ever really draw anything up? That's not your job. Your job's not to worry about any of that stuff. Your job is to take the victims' account of the situation and determine if there was a crime. And if you're going to tell me that you don't know what you had or your cops don't know what you had, you're clearly lying. If you're going to tell me you think that you needed to voucher her phones, you're clearly lying. Like that's clear as day. And you're welcome to come on this podcast. You're welcome to talk with us. We're welcome to talk offline. I come to New York often. We could sit down and talk, but I won't back off of what I did. I think that this needed to be shown because I think there needs to be transparency. I do. I think there needs to be transparency, and I think this is a clear reasoning on why this is. You're turning against Americans. You're becoming political pawns, and you're not even realizing it because you guys are under so much pressure. You're so short-staffed, and your heads are all wrapped up, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and nothing matters because I got to get my pension, I got to do X amount more years, and I hate this, and I hate that, and I wish I could get transferred, and I want to go here. And I know it because we all been there, and not to the height that it is now because Eric Adams is a terrible mayor. The police department leadership is in shambles. They should all be removed, probably charged with multiple crimes at this point as well. But that's something for another day. And I think you really need to start paying attention. And that's not just for you, Dino. I think it's for everyone listening to this, everyone that's still on the job. Just do the right thing. Don't worry about the political ramifications. If Tariq Shepard's in the background telling you Laura Loomer's there, I want this to go away. What do you want me to do? I clear as day. I have video evidence. What do you want me to do? I didn't commit the crime. I didn't do it. What do you want me to do? Yeah, this is what it is. I put it in my memo book. I instructed my guys to make an arrest for grand larceny. You guys do whatever you want with it after that.
Well, in order to do that, you would have to have integrity and you would have to have moral principle. It takes strong men to stand on moral principle. And yes, does that put him in an awkward position by actually doing the moral obligation in comparison to what he's being told to do by the New York City Police Department from the upper echelon? Absolutely. But we have to stand on moral principle. We have to. That's what separates us from being cowards. We have to be strong, noble men. And that's what I expect from the New York City Police Department rank and file, especially a sergeant. Am I being extremely critical of the sergeant? Yes. And I can be because I was in his position at one time, and so are you. And even as a sergeant, I was an anti-crime sergeant for 6 years. Most of my time was spent in plain clothes, but there was plenty of times I was detailed out and I was in uniform. And we didn't have body cameras, and we did have video, but we didn't have the exposure that this sergeant did. But I would never handle myself in this situation and try to bully a victim. Absolutely not. Now, don't get me wrong. Let me not completely excuse Laura Loomer for her behavior. Is she a nuisance to the illegals? Is she a nuisance to the public? Yes. In many cases, I'm sure she is. I'm sure she was. But there's a difference between being a nuisance and committing a crime. And what these illegals did by grabbing her phone is a crime. You can even see in that video portion, you could see her holding the video, her actual cell phone to the side because she's trying to keep it away from them because they're trying to grab it. She should not have to be in that position. If those illegals did not like her being a nuisance, they didn't like being filmed, well, guess what? They have the opportunity to walk away, or they have the opportunity to call the police, but they shouldn't grab her phone. And just the frustration by this sergeant is so obtuse. You could see, again, his demeanor, his hand gestures, the way he speaks, so condescending, and the bullying tactics are infuriating. And let's go back to what you said. This is something I used to preach to my cops. Before you join the police academy and you're injected with that idiot pill that the police department puts in you, you operate life on common sense. And without ever knowing a law, ever knowing the criminal procedure law, the penal law, if you saw something happen, if you saw someone do something which you thought was wrong, you would say, oh, that person's going to get arrested. You don't know what the crime is, but a common sense person would say, well, that person's going to get arrested. But all of a sudden you get injected with that idiot pill, and now they're worried about, well, if we make this arrest, what crime does it fit? And that's why I should tell my cops, we got a book this big. The penal law is a huge book. If you see something wrong, make the arrest. You make the arrest in good faith. We don't worry about the details of what the charge is while we're on a scene. We actually address the victim. We address the potential perpetrator. When we get back to the precinct, the controlled environment, when we take our uniforms off and we relax and we start to do the paperwork, then we can actually talk about what's the legal process, what's the actual charge that applies to this particular incident. And that's why I want to say with the sergeant, I don't have a problem. If you made the determination there's no arrest here, that's fine, but be professional. Say, okay, I have two separate parties. I made the decision. I made the determination. I don't have a crime here, but keep it professional. But that's not what he did. he was completely infected with politics and all the other contributing factors that you mentioned. I do believe could be factors: the pressure, the amount of time that they work, and maybe there's not enough staff, and he has to get to the next call, or maybe he has to get back to the precinct to do some other paperwork. But clearly, he's not engaged. He's not listening, and he doesn't care.
I just want to say, though, if you're on the street for 6 months, you are in the academy for 6 months, and then you're on the street for 6 months, and you at that point do not know what a grand larceny is, then you should be fine. Like, honestly, like you're effective to nobody at that point. Like, you cannot effectively police in New York City. Like, if you didn't know that was a grand larceny, there's a big problem there. There's a very big systemic problem in the New York City Police Department. But here's another shot of him talking to the complainant when he's telling her, I need your phone right now. You got to give it to me right now. Like, oh, you can't make any calls. I need it right now. If I don't have it this second, basically, is what he's telling her. See his hand gesture. He's pointing down. And she's like, oh, my God, I don't know what to do. Do I call a lawyer? Like, he's not explaining anything to her why he needs the phone, because he doesn't need the phone. So he can't have a rational explanation. And then the other journalist is saying, no, you need the video. And he's shushing him. And the other thing he says, which my 10-year-old daughter says when she gets frustrated, she tells me, that's not how this works. And I'm like, no, that's exactly how this works. And that's what I see with him. I see my 10-year-old daughter. That's not how this works. That's not how this works. And then the guy actually asks him a question. He says, well, if we give you the phone, could you mail it back to us? Because he doesn't know how it works in New York City. He doesn't know that your thing's going to go in evidence. And no one's ever mailing that phone to you, by the way. You got to come back and get it. And good luck even getting it if they didn't lose it, And he's like, and he says to him again, that's not how this works. And he's like, I'm just asking you a question. Like, he's not listening at all. So I don't feel bad at all about posting it. I don't feel bad at all about doing this podcast about it. Because again, like I said, I think, I think that he should be fired? No. Do I think that he should be disciplined? I think that, talking to and getting embarrassed publicly enough is enough discipline, in my opinion. And seeing that, like, literally, like, go through those comments. There's a lot of comments on that one post that I put out. There's a lot of comments on Loomer's X, and you could see it's people on all sides of the aisle, other than him and his boys, like, trying to defend his actions. I mean, other than that, you see everyone is basically like, what the hell was that? And again, I'm just going to say, what the hell was that? Do a lot better than that. I would be very disappointed, and I'm sure you would be too, if that was your wife, if a cop spoke to anybody, like that was a victim of a crime. And yeah, Eric, I'll agree with you. Is it her presence a nuisance? Yes. But she's no more of a nuisance than any other media, and she's no more of a nuisance than every other person protesting whatever they're in support of: pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, whatever it is. I mean, everybody you encounter throughout the day as a New York City police officers pretty much going to be a nuisance to you, right? They're going to cause you work. They're going to cause you a lot of paperwork. So I think we just need to be a lot better than that. And I'm glad we did this. Honestly, I'm glad that we spoke about it. And then honestly, we received a lot of messages, and it made me want to smash you harder on this podcast, but I'm just not that person. But I don't care, and I know all the things that have been said about myself and Eric, and I really don't care about that either. So I just don't care. But like, we're just not that people, but we're just giving you an honest opinion, and I'm glad you got to see what people think about it, because honestly, you deserve it. That was absolutely wrong. I mean, you tried to shit can a job for political gain. It was completely political. And again, like we were saying, if it wasn't Laura Loomer, if it was Jumaane Williams or somebody else, I personally believe you would be kissing his ass. That's how I feel.
Yeah, that's why I said that earlier. 100%. If this was Relly Rowe, or this was Jose LaSalle from Cop Watch, and they were yelling and screaming, and they were getting in his face, you would see a completely different demeanor. He would probably try to de-escalate the situation. He would probably be extremely accommodating, and he would probably not be asserting his dominance. He would actually probably be much more passive and much more inviting. And it's so sad to me because here we have these journalists. They're pretty compliant and they're pretty passive when it comes to this sergeant. They're allowing him to assert his dominance. They're very calm. They're just trying to ask questions. They're not yelling and screaming. And I believe the reason why it's so funny that you have this body. I believe the reason why he's being a bully is because he knows he can. So I don't know him, and listen. I heard that he has a lot to say about you and I don't care. I don't take it personal because if I didn't know these things, it wouldn't make a difference. But based on what I see a weak man. And again, he's exactly what I've said this police department is now comprised of. It's men that are meek, timid, and docile. Now, I'm not saying he's timid. He's not timid with them. I'm sure he would be timid with Ellie Rell and Jose LaSalle. But he is weak. This is very weak to assert your dominance on these women who are no threat to you. Clearly, they're no threat to you. And you're almost threatening that if she doesn't go back to the precinct with you and doesn't give you the phone right now, that you're not going to report the crime. How uncomfortable is that already? She's already having a bad day because they're out there doing their job, whether you like it or not. You don't have to like the way they do their job, but they're doing it. They're doing it within the means of the law and their rights. They have the right to do so. And now you're putting the pressure on them to give up their phone. She's already uncomfortable that someone grabbed it from them. Maybe they're scared to go back there and continue to do their job, continue to do further journalism. And you're being a complete bully. That's a coward. I think he's a coward the way he's acting. So I don't think that he needs to be disciplined. I think he needs to be humbled. And I think that he should be transferred and sent to the South Bronx immediately. Because I can tell you right now, if you assert your dominance on potential victims in the South Bronx where I worked, they will humble you. You will learn very quick. You will not have that demeanor. The demeanor that he has will not, I'm telling you right now, you will not survive because they will eat him alive. They will get his information. They will make a civilian complaint while he's talking to them because most of the residents that I dealt with, especially the South Bronx, they understand. They understand the encounters with the police department. They understand the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Not everyone, but most of the people, they do understand because they go to community meetings. They're addressed by community leaders on how to interact with the police department and not to allow the police department to assert dominance on you, especially when you believe that you are a victim. So I think he should be transferred.
I mean, it's ridiculous. The whole demeanor is sick. It really is. It's and then I don't know 100%, but I believe he tried to allege that Laura Loomer is a white supremacist too, which is completely laughable because she's hated by the left and she's hated by the far right too. So I don't see her as a white supremacist at all. I think she's a free speech absolutist. And, she's very similar to, I wouldn't even say she's I wouldn't say she's an auditor type where she's going to test you. As far as free speech, she will test you. And like I said, she's an aggressive journalist in her questioning, in her line of questioning, not in her demeanor at all. And I agree. These people are very meek and they don't understand. They're trying to understand what he's telling them. And he's completely bullying them. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, I personally think that it's very politically motivated, the whole thing. I think that if New York City mayor, this was any of his people, this was Fabian Levy trying to do this was anyone else, this would be no questions asked. They would go there. Oh, could you please email me a copy of the video, ma'am? Thank you. Could you text it to me right now? Thank you. And that illegal immigrant would already have been brought back to the precinct. And there would be no need for them to come back to the precinct or any other. We'll just get your number. We'll call you if you have any questions, blah, 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 blah. So I think it's very politically motivated. Again, I don't know if it's politically motivated because the upper echelon told him to go there and handle it, or because he himself has turned into a progressive minion of the left, and he just taking it upon himself to go after Laura Loomer. And again, I believe it's very politically motivated. I don't have proof of it, but everything in his demeanor, I didn't want to handle it from the get-go. I didn't want to listen to anything I was told. I didn't want to see the video. And even when I saw the video, I still tried to confiscate your phones to deter you from reporting the crime so that I could say that you were uncooperative. And again, I'm sure if I look at those charges, grand larceny won't be on there. I'm sure if I look at that, that person was released if he was even booked. That's another question. Was he even booked or was he released minutes later? We don't know.
People do not like to be left in the dark, right? We always hear from the leftists, the anti-police advocates. We always hear the buzzword de-escalation. And I think that it's ironic because I believe that he actually escalated this situation, not with the potential perpetrators, but he escalated with the potential victims. Even when he starts out, he says, this is being recorded. And again, he was being very aggressive in his tone, in the way he was posturing his body, saying it's being recorded, almost like, well, I'm letting you know that, he might as well have said, listen, I think this is complete bullshit and you're wasting my time. And that's why I think he could have de-escalated by saying, hey, listen, I want to let you know, I understand you're alleging a crime. This is going to be recorded so that if we do make an arrest, this will be part of the evidence along the way. Now, that is de-escalating the situation because you're keeping them informed, right? Now, if you do think they are full of shit, you have a right to do think that. Don't show them your cards and let them know you think that. That's how you stay professional also. Say, okay, I got your story. I appreciate it. Let me go investigate further and I'll make my determination. But don't show all your cards and say, well, you don't know how this works and, and shush the other person that's trying to ask you questions. Like, okay, sir, I understand that maybe you can say, sir, I understand you're excited, but let me get some information from Laura. And then when Laura's done, let me get more information from you. It's the same thing. It's the tone. It's your demeanor. And again, I don't think you have to bully your hands and be aggressive to these potential victims. He doesn't see them as a threat at all. And I think that's a great observation you made. His gun, he's not blading with his gun away from the potential victims. He's blading where his gun is near the potential victim. So he doesn't see them as a threat at all. John, let me ask you a question. If Laura Loomer and the other potential victim that he threatened to take the phone was screaming and yelling and pointing in his face and just acting completely irrational, how do you think this encounter would have played out?
I still think it would have been similar. I think his demeanor would have changed slightly, but I still think he went there with the intent of shit-canning that job. By shit-canning, I mean he did not want to take the report. He wanted to say that they were uncooperative and wanted a 90 yellow it, unnecessary call, unnecessary 911 call. That's how he would have marked it. So I think it would have been, I think his demeanor would have changed a little bit, but I don't think the outcome would have changed because, again, I just think there was a very political motivating factor. And that's a great point that you brought up. I just want to let you know I'm recording this. Dude, they're journalists and they're all recording you. Laura Loomer laughed. She's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm recording this too, and she was like if you watch the beginning of it, it was actually really fun. Like, she's like, okay, like I'm recording this too. I'm aware. I just want to let you know I'm recording this, and she's like, all right. And as they're recording him, like I don't know. I think it was anything but professional. I don't think it would have mattered if at all, because I think that there was a already predetermined outcome on his part of what he wanted to do there. So again, he might have been a little maybe different. Maybe he would have been more aggressive. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was my point. I think that he already knew that she poses no threat. I don't think that, and I don't think that he's actually concerned with the upper echelon. Now, I said I do think he should be transferred, but I don't think he won't be transferred. I don't think he will be transferred because I don't think the leadership of the police department will find anything problematic. Even though if they were to watch this, they would see the unprofessionalism. This is actually goes in line with the direction of the police department that it's in right now, and which is progressive politics. And that's protecting the illegals, not having the eye of the public on them, controlling the media. That's a big narrative, right? Controlling the media that is in opposition to the legals. Laura Loomer is trying to get information on the legals, so he's doing his job as per this upper echelon. So I don't think that they'll find it problematic. I don't think they would show him any discipline. I believe that he should be transferred, but I think it's interesting. You and I were both talking about this offline. If anything, he might be awarded for his actions that he took here, because he did exactly what his leaders expect, what Kaz Daughtry, John Schell, and Jeffrey Mandry and Tariq Shepard expect from him, is by not having the spotlight and by keeping crime down, by not taking a grand larceny number. So we actually may see the opposing opposite here. What are your thoughts on that?
Like I said, I think it's very politically motivated. So he knows either he was playing to the upper echelon into New York City mayor. Crime is down. Crime's just your perception. Migrants all came here to work. None of them commit crimes. They're all law-abiding citizens. Or he got a phone call from maybe a Tariq Shepard, maybe a Kaz Daughtry, maybe a John Schell, maybe his CO, and he knew, he was told already what the outcome was, so he doesn't have anything to worry about, right? And that's more what it appears to me, because you're on body camera. You know this person's a national journalist. You know this is going viral. You know that this interaction, millions of people are going to see this. You know more than likely your body camera is going to be reviewed 8 ways to Sunday, and you still act like that. I could 100% see now that after we do this podcast, it actually work in his favor. You know, it actually work in his favor that we posted about it. But you know what won't work in his favor is the actual reality, because we want to talk perception reality. The reality of it is nobody supports this. 99.9% of the people that watch this say you're an idiot. You know, people are saying you should be fired, you should be this, you tried to do this, you tried to do that. Nobody's really supporting you. Again, just your friends and you. That's it. Because honestly, and they shouldn't even support you. You made it was a dumb thing. I don't think it should happen again. But from everything I hear and saw, I think that we should expect a lot more of this from you, because that's what I'm seeing. I mean, I don't see any person, I don't see from what I'm hearing is that you think you did anything wrong. So again, we'll give you the opportunity to come on here and defend yourself, say how you acted properly, and we'll give the opportunity again to John Schell, to Kaz Daughtry, to your commanding officer, to Tariq Shepard. You could come on here and tell us why this was the proper thing for this sergeant to do too. If we're wrong, if we're spreading misinformation, because again, it's going to be spread that we're against the rank and file of the New York City Police Department because we give our opinions on things involving the New York City Police Department. So that will be the misinformation spread. But again, this is an open platform, and anybody's welcome to come on here and tell us exactly the training in the New York City Police Department, and that this is the type of behavior that you expect in the New York City Police Department. I'd love for any of you to come on here. It would be a great learning experience, and I welcome it.
So I'm glad that you brought that up. You mentioned that you believe that there was a phone call to this sergeant about this actual particular incident, which I believe also, which is why I have a theory on this actual incident. And I need to go back and watch the video unless we watch it here. So I have a theory on why his hands were in his pockets, in his front pockets. So it's completely odd to actually talk to potential subjects or potential victims with your hands in your front pockets. It's completely goes against every tactic we've ever learned in posture and interviewing stance. But I believe that his phone was inside his front pocket. And I believe that the reason why his hands were in his pockets was he was potentially expecting his next phone call, awaiting a phone call about this actual incident. So I need to look at it, see if I can see if there's a phone there. But I suspect, because I do know most cops that I worked with, they didn't keep their hands in those front pockets, but a lot of them did keep their phone in the front pocket because it's easy access to get to, especially when wearing that jacket. So my theory is he was actually caressing the phone, waiting for another phone call. Just as when I used to work as a special operations lieutenant, anti-crime sergeant, John, you know the same thing. When we watched behavioral indicators and we would apprehend perpetrators in possession of illegal firearms, subconsciously, the perpetrators, the person of interest, would constantly touch the area where the firearm is to make sure it's there. So I believe that he was actually touching the phone. That's my theory on that.
It's a good theory. I mean, I can't tell either way. You can't tell. He definitely has a lot of stuff in his pockets. But I mean, it's a good theory. Yeah, and again, I don't think Laura Loomer is going anywhere in New York City without everyone getting a heads up. Like, hey, she's here. You know, they're so obsessed with bad media. This administration, it's insane. You know, I mean, they're the biggest purveyors of misinformation, so they're very scared of any type of transparency and any type of media that's unfriendly to them. That's why you see them on the same networks over and over again. You know, you see the same journalists cover them, and you see them shy away from other journalists. So, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening in New York City. I don't know where this all leads, you know, and you said something earlier about how this all started with Terrence Monahan kneeling. Could you go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. So you had put a tweet out today, and I posted above it, and I said that this political movement within the police department started with Terrence Monahan. That was the day that the police department was infected with politics. And Chief Monahan, shortly after that, he retired, but he passed the torch to the upper echelon of the New York City Police Department that is now policing based on politics. You have the tweet?
I don't. No.
Yeah, and I really do believe that. I believe that he spearheaded this movement, that the police department is not apolitical anymore and actually panders to the public based on progressive politics. And again, he retired shortly after that and passed the torch. And we see it in his successors right now with Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, Jeffrey Mandry, Tariq Shepard, Phil Banks, Ed Caban, and even the mayor himself.
It's a completely politicized department. I think that was I agree with you. It was a pivotal moment. It was a pivotal moment in New York City history. It was a pivotal shift in the New York City Police Department. That scene, you know, that time was I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm still traumatized from all of it. I'm still traumatized from how we handled the onset of COVID, how we handled the 2020 riots, how we then mandated all of this insanity. I'm not gonna lie, it sits with me how I like every now and then I'll go pick my kids up from school and I see them playing, or I see all these kids playing in the park, and it just bothers me because I just flash back to New York City when I didn't hear kids playing. I saw all these kids coming out of school, pouring out of school with their masks on, going into school with their mask. It was such a horrible, horrible time in New York City, and everyone just shied away from it and didn't want to talk about it because, hey, you know, there's bad things going on. You don't want to get labeled as you're a denier, or you're a science denier, or you're not following the science and all this other stuff. And then the same thing with this, like when we talk about any incident that happens in New York City or in the New York City Police Department, it's always everybody's attacking us, right? Oh, you're this, those guys, don't listen to them, blah, blah, blah. And like, really, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're just talking about it, right? Everyone in the locker room's talking about it. You don't think that everyone in the New York City Police Department is talking about this? Because I'll tell you right now, I got a ton of messages from people that were like, yo, that sergeant is an ass. That was ridiculous. And I'm not even saying from cops. I got messages from everybody, every rank, saying that was bad. That was terrible. You know, and a lot of people think that you should be disciplined. A lot of people think that it calls for discipline. I was never a big disciplinarian. But like, I think a little humbling is fine. I think, you know, hopefully this humbled you. I don't think so. You'll just label us as we're white supremacists too, or we're this or we're that. And that's just how I feel that just going to happen just from all the stuff we've seen. So, but that's fine. Call us whatever you want.
Well, it's such I care less at this point. The same thing. If any fellow cops or friends of this sergeant are telling him that he handled that well, and they're just completely being dishonest. Honestly, if they don't say to him like, "Dude, you were just completely unprofessional. Like, you look terrible on camera here," then honestly, then they're not friends. Because they're just completely being dishonest and it's disingenuous. Because honestly, that was a bad portrayal of the police department. I think that, you and I were talking about this offline. We were saying, right, throughout my tenure in my career, I always would say damn, why does everybody hate us? But then you see an incident like this, especially retirement. We have the time to really dissect this and go through it. And we watch this and say, wow, I get it. I can understand why people hate us, because it's one representation that just solidifies for sometimes as a general majority. And you watch this and you say, wow, I mean, this sergeant arguably with overtime is probably going to make near $200,000 for the year, maybe more, especially with the amount of overtime they're doing right now. So someone could say, wow, this member of the service who's supposed to be serving the public is going to make more than $200,000 a year, and this is how he treats the public. And I'd love to say for our friend Edward Raymond that talks about racism within the police department. I mean, you could say right here. I mean, look, we have white female potential victims who are just completely being bullied, and they're not taken seriously. So it just shows this. I don't believe there's any racism within the police department when it comes to potential victims and perpetrators. I think it's really politics. I say most of the issues with the police department are politics and nepotism. And I see this to me, this incident is based on politics.
100%. That's how I feel totally. I feel like it's 100% politically motivated, and it's wrong. You know, it's totally wrong. You know, and I again, like I said, I was a little shocked about the reaction about the post. You know, like that. I was a little shocked about his reaction to the post more than anyone else's. I figured that was going to go pretty wild, and both sides were gonna. I have a good feel for things that I post, like how it's going to go. And I was like, yeah, both sides are going to go off about this, and they're going to be aligned, which doesn't happen often, you know? So again, congratulations. You know, you brought people together. And that's just, you know, like I said, I think it's a learning moment. I don't think that you're a terrible person or you should lose your job or anything like that. I just think you should do a lot better. If this behavior continues, then yeah, I'll think all those things. But, you know, like I said, you know, it's being a sergeant's a hard job. You know, there are plenty of days that if they would have took my blood pressure, they probably would have admitted me right into the emergency room, and that would have been the end of it. You know, like I would have got out for a week or two. It's a very stressful job. I don't know the personnel issues he was dealing with, all the different personalities of all the cops, how many cops he even had, the pressure from your bosses. But again, I always, especially when it comes to anything where people are really asking for your help or advice, I just try to treat it, what would I want to be done if this was a member of my family? How would I want it to be portrayed? What do I think a New York City police officer should do? And then I would just try to emulate what I would expect, right? And I just think that if we all do that, I did that in my whole career, and I think that led me to success. Honestly, I had a great career. If not for the mandate, I would be making over $200,000 a year too, making my own hours with a take-home car still. So that's that, and I'd probably be a captain at this point actually now. But that led me correctly, and I came on this job knowing at no one, and I left the job knowing everybody. You know.
Well, I like to say this, right? Rhetorically speaking, I just want the public to understand there was no sexual occurrence, no allegation of a sexual assault in this incident at all. But rhetorically speaking, hypothetically, what if Laura Loomer and the other woman, the other potential victim, had alleged? What if, I just want the public to understand, what if they alleged that they grabbed their phones and they grabbed their breast or something else? How terrible would we be saying this video was? How unprofessional? How much more would we be criticizing this with a microscope if he would have said, well, you know what? You want me to report this? You have to get in the car with me now. You have to get in the phone with me now. Imagine if we were just to add that, and like I said, this didn't happen, but I just want people to understand. Think about that, John. Imagine we added that in. She says, not only did he grab the phone, but he grabbed my buttocks or he grabbed my breast. How does that change the dynamic? Could you imagine with that he's saying, well, you know what? You have to get in the car with me now? Does that change anything? What do you think?
Oh, if that was the case, I would be saying that he should be fired right off the bat. I mean, listen, I think that he re-victimized the victim here? Absolutely, I do. I think he re-victimized the victims here. 1,000% I do. But if you're going to do that to a victim of a sex crime, that really just shows who you are, and it just shows the compassion you have and humanity you have. And then I think it changes. I think it changes it a lot for me. Does it make it does it change this scenario so much? No, because he still re-victimized the victim here. But I just think it would be way more unforgivable in that scenario than it is here.
The reason why I brought that up, and the reason why I brought that rhetorical hypothetical scenario, because I think that if we say that, we would get much more compassion and empathy for Laura Loomer and that other potential victim. And I don't think anyone would be siding with the sergeant at all. So again, let's take that sexual assault out. Let's take that potential. Let's go back to the phone. And let's just think how they feel. That these guys, they don't know who they may be intimidated by, especially what they're hearing, how much crime has been emanating from the illegals. And they grab their phone. These are two women, right? Who could be physically dominated by these illegals. They're out there. I mean, it is dangerous. They're out there reporting, gathering information from these from illegals that they don't know. They're also in the middle of a metropolis in Manhattan. So let's take away this sexual assault. And these guys grab their phones. That's why I say, how do you think they felt at that point? Again, I think the sergeant really victimized them. And for them, and that's why I said for them, it's almost in comparison to being sexually assaulted because someone grabbed their stuff, invaded their stuff. Maybe they were scared. I mean, honestly, she looks at this point, she looks intimidated, and I mean, I don't know her normal coloring, but she looks kind of pale, and she looks like she's extremely vulnerable here. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, she was looking at Laura Loomer for advice. Like, she didn't know what to do. She's like, can I call my attorney? And he's berating her. No, I need your phone right now. He has his hands in there. And then when she's like, can I think about it for a second? Look right there. He puts his hand over his mouth and he's thinking. And he's thinking, what's my next step? What's my next chess move to get them to not file this report? I mean, very unflattering. Look, and then he continues to tell them that this is a police matter and you're being uncooperative. And I can't do anything. And before they're even done talking, he walks away. Now, I can't see the phone in his pocket, but I agree with you, Eric. I do.
I mean, could you imagine, John, right now, your wife is in New York, or my wife is in New York, or this sergeant, I don't know if he's married or not, his wife's in New York, and says, listen, I was filming these guys over here. There was something going on. And then they came over and grabbed my phone. And now the police are here, and I told them what happened. And he's telling me I have to get in the car with him right now. And I have to give him my phone. I don't know what to do. You're going to go nuts. What? You got to give him your phone? You got to get in the car right now? You tell him that you're the victim, that they attacked you. No, I told him that. I told him that. But he's telling me I have to get in the car right now, and he's not going to report it. And I'm a little nervous. He's getting extremely aggressive with me. What do I do?
Yeah. I mean, I would be furious. I would be absolutely furious. I mean, I'm furious. I was furious when I watched it. Honestly, I was like, "What is this? What is this? I've never seen this before." So, like I said, I think we beat the hell out of it, but I just think it needed to be pointed out because I mean, it's infuriating to watch, because again, I was on that job and you were on that job and we wore that uniform, and yeah, we had some stressful days, and no, we definitely weren't perfect, but I think that the job's starting to really turn, man. It's starting to become very political, and these guys are becoming political pawns. They're being used for people who really are not going to be looked down friendly on in history. History is not going to be on Eric Adams' side. History is not going to be on Kaz Daughtry or John Shell's side. This is going to be, when we look back in history, a pivotal moment in New York City history and the NYPD. Ed Caban is not going to go down as a storied police commissioner in the NYPD. None of these people will. This is going to be an administration that is going to be really glossed over very quickly in the history books because they failed not only the rank and file, they failed New York City. the integrity is there. You know, we keep putting out stuff about how crime is not down, and everyone talks about how, well, everyone cooked the books. Every administration prior cooked the books, right? And I'll agree with that. Yeah, they did. But what's really different about this administration is not only are they cooking the books, with them cooking the books, the reported crime is still up. But that does not deter them from 1 second from going on the news and telling you that crime's down. Telling your family that you have nothing to worry about. Take the train. When they're walking on the train with 6 bodyguards each, you have cops with 6 bodyguards and an army of uniformed people. They're afraid to walk in New York City streets themselves. And they're telling you to go out and walk in New York City and it's fine. Everything's fine. And when I talk to everyone there, they tell me all the same thing. Yeah, during the day, it's all right, but I don't take the train anymore. I avoid the train. If I got to get in the train, I rush down right before my train comes. I get in and I bounce. And I'm talking about grown guys that are big and that can fight. I'm not talking about little women who are afraid. I'm not talking about elderly. I'm not talking about disabled. I'm talking about grown men who have been in numerous physical fights are telling me this, that I only stay there in the day. I don't like the vibe no more. It's not safe there no more.
Let me ask a question, John. Let's replace Laura Loomer with the Long Island auditor. Rhetorically speaking, so nobody thinks that this actually happened. If Laura Loomer was replaced with the Long Island auditor, and he was on the scene, and he told this sergeant that one of these alleged perpetrators, illegal aliens, grabbed his phone, how do you think that encounter would play out? Because we know that this Long Island auditor stands up to the police. He's much more savvy with police protocol, and he believes in the U.S. Constitution. And we've seen him in the past. He likes to allege that there was an assault when anyone gets near him. How do you think this encounter would play out with this sergeant?
If he even showed up on the scene, would be one that I would question. He might even just verify the arrest from somewhere else. I would question that he even shows up on the scene. But I think it would be just a quick verification. What happened? Okay, see the video real quick? All right, thank you, sir. Yeah, all right. Just get his information. Let's go. And he'd be out of there in 3 seconds. And I honestly think that for anybody. I think that you could replace Laura Loomer with anybody. And I think that's how it'll happen. But the fact that it was Laura Loomer, it was a politically motivated. He had intention when he went over there. His guys already had him in handcuffs standing there. So again, I don't think that they were confused about what they had. I think they knew full well what they had. I think he didn't want them to have what they had. And that's what that shows. And was it because of his own political bias, or was it because the political pressure that he was getting from up top? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say it was the political pressure from up top, and it wasn't his own political bias. He does look like he's boosted, but it doesn't. To me, that doesn't matter. I think it was the political pressure up top.
Well, what's up? I'm sorry, I laugh. What does someone look like that was boosted? You got to answer this.
Skinny, frail, not well kept, wearing a summer cap with a winter jacket, cocked sideways, hand in the front pocket, talks to people with a weird look in their eye, smiles at them. You're coming back with me,
And I'm going to give you one more scenario, because I think you answered that perfectly. That's exactly what I would expect if the Long Island order responded. What about the cop watch? The cop watch people that go around and they actually made a female cop cry in the past by putting her 50A out and questioning her about her public record. What do you think if there were several cop watch members standing around him and asking him about his 50A? How do you think his demeanor would be then? Do you think he would be asserting his dominance? Do you think he would tell them how this works? Do you think he would put them in their place? How do you think his demeanor would be then?
I mean, listen, a couple of people did reach out to me. It seems like he's a pretty active kid. He worked in the 7-7. He's got a few complaints against him. So I don't think that he was like timid as a cop. I don't, just based upon his record. So I don't listen, again, I don't think he would be as as brazen as he is here, where he has his right foot with his gun towards them. I think he would be a lot more hesitant of them turning into adversaries. But I just think it would be, again, I just think anybody else alleging the same thing, I just think it would be a totally different encounter. I think just because it was Laura Loomer, and honestly, Eric, Laura Loomer is a much more national polarizing figure than we are. But in New York City, we're pretty polarizing. So I think that if we did this same thing, like we went there to document anything, to film documentaries or anything, I think this is the exact treatment that we would get as well. So, and then I think even with threats of arrest for absolutely no reason. So this is what you see when you're getting a political spin. And, if that happened to me, I'm going to be a lot more combative than Laura Loomer is. And I'll tell you right now, and I'm going to file every complaint there is known to man, along with a civil and federal lawsuit, because I'm just not there anymore. I'm 43. I'm going to be 44. I don't care what anyone thinks about me. And, I'm just not going to be bullied by people who are going to be the arm of, anti-police progressives. It's not going to happen.
You beat me to the punch. I'm not kidding. I swear to the public, John and I don't discuss what we're going to talk about. But that was my next one. I was going to wrap it up into 3 questions. That was my last thing I was going to ask. That because I just wanted to prove that this is based on politics. Because if you and I were being inquisitive and we were alleged victims in this case, I think we would have gotten the same treatment. Absolutely. Again, I don't think we wouldn't take it. Of course, it would be a different dynamic, a different encounter. But I do believe that he would try to assert his dominance, and we would be treated the same way. And it just shows this is about politics and where you stand in regards to politics in this city at this point. It's sad to watch because honestly, the NYPD was the GOAT of policing. I'm looking at his uniform right now. That patch meant so much. That uniform, that blue, that gold. That sergeant shield, it was so iconic, it was powerful, and just to see him just demoralize it, it's sad. You know what? Listen, I know that we're being extremely critical of him, and I don't know him personally. He could be a decent guy. I don't know. I really don't know, but it's hard to believe he is a decent guy. That his demeanor just speaks volumes to me, and just even that hand in the pocket says a lot to me. I mean, just could care less what this lady. He's not even listening. He already made his determination. His head cocked to the side, and I think he deserves the criticism. Maybe this conversation, us being extremely critical, maybe will save him from doing worse further in his career. And you know what? That's good that you stopped right there. With that being said, what do you think about the demeanor of the cops? Right now, we could see about 3 or 4 of them. What do you think of the demeanor of the cops at this point?
I mean, I personally hate the hands on the vest. I see all the new guys do it. They all have their hands tucked in the vest. I honestly hate it. I always kept my hand like on the top of my gun. Like I would rest. It's actually heavy on your hips when you're standing around for a long day. Like you're putting your weight down on there. But I never really liked the hands up anywhere. Maybe if you had to move, maybe I would do it in a stretching manner. But I mean, when you look at it at this scenario, he's looking at you like a maniac. And you have all these cops staring at you as well. I don't think that they mean anything. I don't think they mean to be intimidating at all. But look at that. That's a pretty intimidating scene, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's, if you're on the other end of that, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, you got 5 cops staring at you, right? Everyone's focused on you. And the other one thing I just want to talk about that I don't think we talked about, or we may have, but I just want to bring it up again if we did, is when he says to her, how do you know that they're illegal? By law, I'm not allowed to ask them. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like, they're in the Roosevelt Hotel. You don't know that they're illegal, bro? What are we even having this conversation for? And that again shows me that there's it's politically driven. You know, I don't want to hear this right-wing rhetoric, you know, and if the messages that we got were true of what he's saying and what information he's trying to relay to us, he's saying that Laura Loomer is a white supremacist and he doesn't want to hear, and basically I don't think that he's pretty right wing himself. I don't think he's a conservative himself. He's probably, if those things are true, I'm gonna think that he has a little political bias on his own. Like I said, I give him the benefit of the doubt. But that statement there, that's not coming from that Balesha. That's coming from him. How do you know that they're illegal? It's like, really? You don't know that they're here illegally? You don't know that? I know you're not. I know you're not allowed to ask them because of a ridiculous law, but you should be.
Well, this just shows how politics plays a huge role in policing, and that's why this podcast is important, because we talk about policing where it's at right now and how politics has infected and injected a different mindset into the police department, especially New York City Police Department. And unfortunately, we see it's widespread throughout the entire country. With that being said, I think you're right. Rhetorically speaking, let's just say Laura Loomer is a white supremacist. Does that change anything? Does that change the way he should handle his job?
No, doesn't. Because like I said, every media personality and every protester, to me, I don't care if I agree with them or I don't. If I'm wearing that uniform that day on that street, they're a nuisance to me. And that's it. They're creating work that I do not want to be involved in. They're creating a scene that I don't want to be around. And it's not because I don't want to do my job, but to me, it's going to seem like, hey, this is unnecessary. This could be avoided. This arrest could have been avoided, right? But now, being retired and looking at it from the outside, a lot of the things I thought were unnecessary when I was a cop, I'm starting to see that a lot of these things are necessary. Like a lot of the protesters that I see, I don't agree with these far left fascist protests that I see. This like, you see this crazy anti-Semitism. You see this crazy, you must obey the narrative. You must obey what we tell you to obey. And like, for a while, even when I retired, I would look at the counter protesters and I would be like, just who cares? Just leave them alone. Just let them say what they're going to say. But now, like looking from the outside, there needs to be opposition. There needs to be people speaking up, and there needs to be people that are willing to put themselves out there and show exactly what's going on. I mean, and the other thing is like, what nobody talks about in the New York City Police Department is what should happen to this kid after he's arrested for a felony. There should be an ICE detainer put on him and he should be deported. He's arrested for a felony crime. He should be deported. Shouldn't be here. We're taking on the world's problems, and everyone's okay with it. I actually had like a 30-year guy messaging me on Twitter the other day, and I think he's still active. And he was telling me about how we work with the Fed still. I was like, I know that you work with the Fed sometimes when they trust you, because the upper echelon's systemically corrupt at this point. I understand that you work with the federal government, but you do not work with ICE. And that's what I said. I said that they no longer cooperate with ICE. So you're not working with the federal government when it comes to illegal aliens committing crimes in this country. So, I don't know where like we were going with that one, but people are starting to like turn about it. Like, and you see there's a political shift. It's like, oh, well, what do you want us to do? I don't know. Not pretend like it's not pretend like it's not happening. That's what I don't want you to do,
Well, I even want to go one further and just prove that politics should not infect police work, and that you have to be apolitical. John, put yourself in the position of that sergeant. And Laura, rhetorically speaking, Laura Loomer's standing there with a sign that says John McCary should have been vaccinated. She's holding that sign that says John McCary should have been vaccinated. And she says, the illegal grabbed my phone without my permission or authority. What are you doing?
Locking them up, dude. Like, it doesn't matter, I'm locking them up. It doesn't, it's happened over and over again. It's happened over and over again where there's people that like, we're public servants. There's people that I don't agree with. There's people that I don't necessarily care for that I'm going to have to serve because I'm a public servant. I have to remain apolitical. There were plenty of anti-police protests where, guess what happened? The people who were anti-police called 911 and they needed the police's help, and we were there for them. And I didn't treat them any different, really. You know, did I do them any favors? Like, am I going to go run out and do a million? No, I'm not. But like, I'm not, you know, I'm also not going to cause them any harm either. It is what it is. You're entitled to your opinion. You're American. I mean, honestly, I always had a lot of fun with the people that were in opposition of the police or in opposition of myself. I always had a good time with people. I just made the best of it. You know, I didn't really take things personal. I understood from being very young on the job. I was immature and I learned pretty quickly, and I understood that I'm representing a uniform, not representing myself. People don't know me. They're not talking to me. You know, they're talking to the New York City Police Department. I'm working for the man. I serve the rich people. I'm working for the Zionists. I'm working for the leftists. I've been accused of everything. We all have. You know, we've been accused of everything, but we remained apolitical. But when we see stuff like this, people accuse you of being political, then, I mean, they got a leg to stand on because it looks very political to me.
Absolutely. Well said. Hands down. I think that's an outstanding outline of what's going on here. Absolutely. That you need to be completely apolitical, especially when you're wearing that uniform. And how do you do that? You have to mostly detach yourself from the situation. It shouldn't matter if it's Laura Loomer or who it is. It doesn't matter what they stand for. What matters is you're doing your job. Is there a crime or not? Very simple. You make the determination, but you have to stay professional. Again, listen, Sergeant, I know we've been extremely critical of you, and I think you deserve it. And I hope that this humbles and changes your perception and that you do better. Because I want better for the rank and file. I want the rank and file to learn from you. You're in a leadership position. I'm sure you aspire to become a lieutenant. So eventually, as a lieutenant, you're not only going to lead cops, but you're going to lead other sergeants. You have to ask yourself, as a lieutenant, would you expect sergeants to act the same way as you did in that position? This is a great opportunity to do some self-reflection. Watch the video and ask yourself, if Laura Loomer was your mother, would you be satisfied with how you handled it? Would you feel comfortable if I was a sergeant and I had your mother as a potential victim and I had my hands up and told them, you have to get in the car now and you have to give me the phone. Well, if you want this to be reported, this is what you had to do. And I was standing like this with my eyes wide open and my hands in my pocket. Would you like that if that was your mother? Probably not. I would hope not. And if you do, then you have some serious issues. But this is a great opportunity to do some self-reflection. I think we beat you up enough for this. I wish you well. I just hope that you do better because you're in a leadership position and they're going to learn from you.
And I look forward to reading more messages from you. that's that's it. I mean, I could care less either way, honestly. I just think it was wrong, and I think, like I said, I don't think it was a major incident, but I think it needed to be highlighted. I do. That's why I shared it. When I watched it, I was like, wow. I was like I said, I saw my 10-year-old daughter telling me that's not how it works. That's not how it works. And, you know, and I'm like, no, that is how it works. And so like that really is my message. That is how it works. You take the video. If you're a victim of a crime, police need the evidence, right? And you should be cooperative with the police at all times, but you also shouldn't be bullied by them either, you know? And I I wouldn't expect that on anybody. Honestly, I wouldn't expect us to act like that. I think it was politically motivated. I think it would be put in a very bad position. And I just hope that the other supervisors and the cops out there understand that, like, if for some reason this did go bad, if it was worse or went, nobody's going to be there for you. These guys that are asking you to do everything and problem, they're not going to be there for you, bro. Their time is so short. You know, it's not even funny, you know. What's the other thing? Last thing before we wrap up. Hearing two rumors. I'm hearing Tanya Kinsella wants to be the PC and Victoria Perry wants to be the first deputy commissioner. I don't know how true that is. I hear that. I also hear Tariq Shepard, police commissioner, Kaz Daughtry, first deputy commissioner. Hearing that Ed Caban has had enough and he's looking to step down, you know, because he's done so much for the New York City Police Department in the time that he's been there. He's looking to leave the most insignificant police commissioner in New York City history, because he's been overshadowed by the real police commissioner, Kaz Daughtry. But again, I don't think it matters. I think whoever they put in there, as long as Eric Adams is the mayor, Kaz Daughtry is going to be the police commissioner. That's how I see it.
Hands down. Absolutely 100%. That's why Tiny Kinsella, I mean, listen, I worked with you. We were rookies together. If you actually want to be the PC, you have to ask yourself, are you actually going to be the police commissioner? Are you okay with being a puppet? I mean, I haven't seen you in years. I don't know. People change over time. Is that who you are? I mean, you have to ask yourself, is that who you want to be? Is it that imperative that you're the police commissioner, but you're going to be so insignificant and that you're just a face, and then you're going to have to do things that you don't agree with? Are you willing to do that? I hope you're not. I honestly hope that you're not. And it's just sad to see. Again, Ed Caban, you've been riding this out. You've been the most insignificant police commissioner. And yes, we understand that you are in a position where you're not allowed to actually be the police commissioner. We don't really know what your capabilities are. But we know that you've allowed Mayor Eric Adams and Philip Banks to make you look silly. Honestly, you've allowed them to put you in this position. Is it that important to have that name pinned on you to be the police commissioner in name only? And that's why I question the morality of the upper echelon of the police department. Is it more important to have an image of status than actually have moral principle? And I think we've seen enough with the police department. I mean, even in this video here, we see it with the sergeant that's learning from the upper echelon of the police department, acting unprofessional. What do we see by John Shell and Kaz Daughtry on social media on a daily basis, acting unprofessional and speaking on behalf of themselves and not speaking on behalf of the police department? I'm saddened to see what we see from top down and bottom up. I hope that we can see a better version of the police department coming soon, because this is not the version that we saw when we were employed by the New York City Police Department, and it wasn't that long ago. Again, I hope that we can do better. With that being said, New York's finest retired and filtered
one more thing before we go. Wait, one more thing. One more thing.
We're not going to end it. Yeah.
One more thing, and then end it. One more thing. So we put out a video of Kaz Daughtry being booed at the FD NYPD hockey game, right? But apparently everybody was booed. I heard his was the loudest, and everyone said the video didn't do it any justice. So that was one thing, but there were a lot of photos circulating that John Shell put out on his social media. One of them, he's with Dave Portnoy, and he's drinking a beer. Eric, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad you asked that, right? So I have no problem with John Shell enjoying a beer and being a human being at the game. But when you have a picture that is representative of the police department, you shouldn't have any beer, especially since the New York City Police Department, the representation has always been that there's no alcohol when you're on duty, when you're in presentation of the police department. Even at funerals, police officers can't have any drinks. We have police officers who've gotten suspended for drinking alcohol while they're coming home from a funeral of a fellow police officer. So you have to set the example. So I don't think that he should have a beer when he's representing the New York City Police Department. Absolutely not.
Yeah, because I mean, my thing is, I agree with you 100%. Who cares if he had a beer? But if a captain wanted to take that photo, an inspector would have taken that photo, any cop would have taken that photo. You've never seen anyone drinking on social media once using a department account. That was the first time. That was the first time that I've ever seen that a member of the New York City Police Department was actually drinking alcohol in any type of photo that went out on social media. And I do think it's significant because, like you said, we've had people suspended for drinking a beer when their friend got killed. Not for acting out of the line, for drinking a beer when their friend got killed, suspended. And his supervisor also suspended. So I do think it's a big deal because it just shows the do as I say, not as I do mentality. And honestly, I just think it shows complete lack of maturity. Complete utter lack of maturity. And honestly, I normally, like, I'm like pretty kind-hearted even after everything and all the nonsense we get every day. I like, even this kid, like, I don't really think he boosted. I just didn't like the messages I read. But like, I just didn't like what I read. But like, I don't, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and I don't like to see anybody boo, like get booed or feel like an idiot or like walk into an arena and everybody boo you. But honestly, when I seen it, I was like, good, they deserve it. They need to know how everybody feels and stop being surrounded by yes men where it's like, oh yeah, no, you guys are doing a great job, and this is the best version of the New York City Police Department, because it's not. It's not even close to it. It's not even close to the New York City Police Department where people loved coming to work. Yeah, are there a select few that do? Yeah, but they have carte blanche. It's not a police department that ever existed for anybody else, and it's just for a select few amount of people. Most people on this job worked, and they worked their ass off, and they really got nothing for it other than heartache and pain. So to sit there and think that you're the best, I mean, that, hopefully that showed you got no clothes on, the emperor's naked,
Outstanding, brother. I agree. I think we covered a lot of info here. Absolutely. I think the police department is still, it still has some remnants of what it used to be, but we want to see a better version. Even when you watch this podcast, you see in the background, we have a portion of the patch here because it's something that we're all proud of. And that's what we want. We want to see it back to this. Again, you know what? Yeah, we're very critical of Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, the upper echelon, and we were very critical of this sergeant. I think sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes in order to be humbled, that rock has to come down hard. But that's why I say do some self-reflection. Say, you know what? I need some humbling myself. And none of this is personal, but it's necessary. It has to be done. And I guess we'll take another crack at this. So what do you say? Any last words before I close it out?
No, I'm good.
You sure?
I'm good.
You sure?
That's all right.
Again, and listen, this just proves we don't plan this out. This is John and I giving our opinion, our perspective, our analysis from our experience, what we saw from the police department, what we see now, and what we want to see in the future. And I hope everyone wants to see a better version also. So with that being said, John, thank you, brother. We'll try this again. New York's Finest Retired Unfiltered Podcast. Back at you. Take care.
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.